after all these years, I've had the opportunity to be a carer consultant within the public mental health system here in Victoria, and also to help introduce them to resources and all the kinds of things that the job entailed. But discussing with them, I realised how much in common we had, and it was mostly to do with issues about how we actually get information from the psychiatric profession and the people who, the allied workers who work in the profession, like social workers, psychologists or whatever. And most of the things that I found were that we as carers needed to know many more things that we didn't get the chance to be told by the clinicians on how to work with our person, how to manage the person, how to really understand these difficult behaviours. And I'll give the example with the difference between a parent, for example, who has a physically disabled person living with them at home. That carer is given instructions on how to lift the person, how to bathe the person, clothe the person, maybe how to hold their hand. There are a whole lot of issues that for that carer to be able to cope in the home, there are these different ways of handling their person with the difficulty that they have. Now, with mental illness, we know that the symptoms are behavioural, and when they're behavioural issues, we as carers don't always understand, is it actual illness behaviour, is it manipulative behaviour, or is it learned behaviour? Now, these things are often said to us by the clinicians. They may say, when we give an example, that our person doesn't do something, they may say, oh, well, that's learned behaviour, that's not a symptom. But they don't then move on and give us a strategy that we need to do. And I'll give the example, there were for many weeks and months that my boy had been telling me that I wasn't his mother, and using very strange stories and relating all sorts of weird things to how he was born. Obviously, when I first heard that expression, "You're not my mother," my first instinct, and it's the natural instinct, was to say, of course I am. But at that particular time, it was fairly early in his illness, I can honestly say I still didn't understand exactly what these behaviours meant and how they were regarded as symptoms. I just thought, why is he doing this? Why is he telling me I'm not his mother? Does he hate me? Or have I done something to him? And I was trying to figure out quickly in my mind, no, I don't think so. I haven't done anything. I've done the right things. But he kept telling me these things. And the more I kept justifying who I was, and there was one particular day when we were on a holiday and we were walking along a ridge which was high up on sort of a mountainside, and it was actually the first time he actually told me that no, you're not my mother. I come from outer space. And he went on and told me all different things. And immediately my first instinct was to say, of course I'm your mother. And I went through a whole series, and if I want to, I can talk for hours. And I told him that I was his mother, how long the labour was, and when I breastfed him, and I went on and on. But then I noticed that his eyes were getting larger and angrier, and he's got big black eyes. And if you've watched somebody getting angry, you might notice that a lot of expression is through the eyes. And suddenly I realised something's wrong. If I don't stop justifying that I am his mother, something serious might happen. So my instinct then was right. It said, stop. Stop, mother, stop. and I stopped talking. And then I thought, I know what I'll do now. I'll suggest he has a cigarette. And I was trying to stop him smoking, but nevertheless, there were a time when maybe a cigarette was the answer. And I said to him, open my bag, your packet of cigarettes there, take one and have a good smoke. So he smoked and he puffed and he puffed and he puffed, but gradually his eyes calmed down and he settled down. And I realised then I did the wrong thing. That wasn't the way to communicate with a person who has this particular or other delusions. They truly believe these things that their brain is telling them. So my instinct was wrong in the first place, but right the second, where it said to me, it's time to go back now, quietly, walk back to the city square where we were going to meet his dad. So we walked quietly, and I decided that I would only say very little, and I would remark on nature. I would talk about the olive trees, I would talk about the dry grass, or the branch of a tree falling down. Something so different from illness, so different from mothering altogether. And I suppose coming down the hill, I must have only said 10 words altogether. By the time we got to the village square, my son was quiet, gentle, and his dad looked at him and said to me, Callie, our son's really well tonight. About 9 o'clock at night he went to bed. An hour later there was screaming, there was anger, there was all sorts of things. The voices in his head were so disturbing, and the episode had come again. So what we need to really understand is that with these illnesses, particularly those that have voices, hallucinations and delusions, they're episodic. For example, the trip within the olive trees up on the cliff. After all the anger, he calmed down. He was okay for 7 or 8 hours. Then it came back again. So as carers, we need to understand these things. We need to understand how to handle them. And these are the kinds of things that I think the clinician, the whole clinical profession, from the psychiatrist, psychologist, all the people that actually work with us, work with our person with illness and work with the family, need to be able to give us guidance. I don't mean telling us, you must do this, you must not do that. I don't mean that, and this is something that professionals don't want to do, I'm pretty sure, because everybody's got their way, they've got their own values. But just like a doctor, a GP may tell a mother how to help her baby when they're coughing and got whooping cough or something, or when they've got a cut on their arm and the doctor puts stitches in, and he may say, well, undo the bandage and see if everything's okay, and he gives you it's a direction really, or guidance, a strategy on how to manage it. I think this is what we're asking. And I'll give you another example. It happened to me early in the piece with my boy's illness. I still didn't understand a lot of things, but there were things that I wanted to know. And I remember, as a lot of carers can identify, we're looking for answers. And a lot of us will go around and change doctors, change psychiatrists, talk to different people. We'll go to our churches, we'll ask questions. We want answers, but we can't find them. So I went to a private sector psychiatrist at one stage, and it was after he'd started talking about that I'm not his mother. This continued, that I'm not his mother, for quite a long time actually. So I asked this particular doctor, and I said, please doctor, what will I say when my son tells me I'm not his mother? I am his mother, of course I'm his mother. And I started to get a bit angry at the doctor. And he looked at me very gently, very, very gently, and he said, it's important for you to stay neutral. Well, I've gone home and I still don't know what he really meant. Another one I went to, I changed because I wasn't satisfied. Neither was my boy for that matter. Didn't like that particular doctor. So we went to another one. I asked the same question again. This one told me to act normal. Now, again, act normal. How can you really act normal when you don't understand lots of things? And when I went home and told his dad, and he said, well, whose normal will we have, Cal, yours or mine? So what I'm trying to say, it's so important that you give us simple, we don't need medical explanations. You have your profession, you'll talk to your colleagues and use medical explanations. But those of us who come to you as carers, some of us can be professionals, some of us have had a fair amount of education, some of us have worked in the workforce for many years and we've become wise. But there are also a number of us who come from other countries, can't speak English. There are some of us who've come from backgrounds who didn't have much of an education. We have to learn, you have to learn as professionals, that mental illness is such a long period in a person's life, and we're living with it day in, day out. And those behaviours are so extraordinary at times. We must understand how to actually work with our person.